This is Puppets by Arlee. I'm Arlee, and this is how you make a vest and coat for a marionette. If you like my videos, please like and subscribe. Every time you subscribe, I'll be able to costume a marionette. Pattern for the bodice of this puppet. So, we're going to drape around the torso of this puppet. Get some scrap fabric. And I just have 2 pieces of random scrap fabric here. And then you're going to pin it around. And we're just trying to find the shape of what this torso would be. And pin it around at how snug you want the garment to be. So if you want it super, super tight, pin it at a tight angle. If you want it looser, pin it at a looser angle. And be sure that as you're pinning, there's no puckers or folds. Where the pins are is straight to replicate where a seam would be. Check the back side too. Be sure that where I've pinned has no puckers. Then mark where your seam would go. And kind of draw where you would imagine the neck to be and the armhole. And then draw where you like the bottom of the garments to be. We're going to be making a simplified suit coat and a waistcoat, which is a vest for underneath. And right here, we're not drawing like seam allowances here. We're just drawing where our seam itself would be. back, center, front. All right, now we take out the pins and see what shape we have. All right, there are my two pieces. Now, next we need to true these pieces. So cut out along your lines. These are some tree crazy shapes. Now, since this is a simplified version of a coat, this is not a full-on double lapel coat. I'm not going to line it. You certainly could. And you certainly could add a real collar, but I am not doing that because I want to get it done faster, and I don't think those extra details will show up. So definitely you can choose how complex you want to make your puppet garments. So I'm going to true the front part of this bodice. So I'm going to trace one side. What I'm trying to do is get the average shape of all of these shapes. Okay, so that's one. Turn that same pattern over, and I like to do tracing of the front side in warm colors and tracing of the back side in cool colors. And try to line it up as much as you can. So I traced one with hot pink, and now I'm tracing the second with orange. All right, there's one. Now here's the back one. So this is the back one. I'm going to use a blue. You can use this method of draping in order to cover any shape with fabric. not necessarily clothes. If you're making foam puppets that need to have skin on them, all right, so that's one. Switch it over to the other side. This time I'll use green. All right, now I've been using fine Sharpies. So the next thing I have to do is take the average between my two warm colors and my two cool colors. So finding my average between my front and my back. So in order to keep them straight, I have a fat Sharpie that's a warm color. And what you do is if you have 2 points, then you mark in between and you draw a line to where it intersects. And for right now, I'm just tracing in between the warm colors. All right, that's my front. And then for my back, I got this thick blue one. That's a little dried out. There's a purple one. Whenever there's 2 points, I like to put a dot in between and then draw up through. All right, we got a front and a back. And sometimes this is a good place to stop for some puppet building because you want a difference between your front and your back. But my little marionettes are so little, I choose to make them symmetrical front and back. I'm going to use black now. Now I'm going to find the average between my thick cool and my thick warm marker. All right. Then add a 5/8 inch seam allowance, which I have this special ruler that has the 5/8 inch seam allowance. Add it on. So from my black marker, what I'm using, now some of this 5/8 inch seam allowance I'm going to fold under into a little hem. All right. All right, there is my shape. Cut that out. And last step, fold it in half. And cut off the excess. There is my shape. Next, we're going to cut a front and a back for a coat and a front and a back for a vest. I'm going to use the full side for the back, and then when I cut the front, I'm going to cut this and then add an extra 5/8 inch seam allowance on the front. This is my vest fabric. And then lay out your 5/8 inch extra seam allowance. And if possible, always lay your pattern pieces facing up and down the same way. If the fabric has a nap or if it has a texture that will show. Now, in addition to this, I wanted to do kind of a mock open front for the vest. So I'm just going to do a small opening in the front and cut that. And I'll fit a triangle for underneath later of like a mock shirt. All right, put that aside. Next, let's do the coat bodice. stuck in the, cut all the way down to the corner. Oh, geez. And we will drape and cut the sleeve later. All right, we have our 2 bodice sections. Next, get out the machine. And be sure you check if your fabric has a right side and a wrong side, meaning the side meant to face out and the side meant not to face out. It looks like my fabric here is the same. So I want to make a vest front. So I'm just going to eyeball a fold over of a 5/8 inch V-neck. Just sew with a regular straight stitch. And press that. Next, now take front sides together, right sides together of your vest piece. And sew it down the front. Press that. Next, I want to take, I have a scrap of polyester satin here, and I want to make kind of a fake shirt behind. So I'm going to take my scrap, lay it flat along the top of my armholes. And then I'm going to stitch along where I've already stitched. Now, if you need to turn a corner while stitching on a machine, how you do that is you put the needle down inside, lift up the pressure foot, move your project, put the pressure foot down, and start again. And go ahead and cut off some of the excess. Then do a hem on the bottom. Eyeball it at your 5/8 inch. And you can also do it on. Be sure we got the right and wrong side happening. If you were sewing a vest for a human, you would do the hem, the bottom hem last. But since I have to finish everything and then slide it onto the puppet, I am doing my side seams and shoulder seams last. All right, take this over to your ironing board and press this. Let's do our side seam. So take the front and the outside of back and put it together. And I'm going to sew up the side and stop at the bottom of the armhole, that is. And press those. Side seams. I have a seam roll here. You can buy them special, or you can take an old magazine, roll it up and tape it, and then cover it with cloth. That works too. And this makes it so that the iron is only touching the stitched part. And by the way, every time you start working with new fabric that you haven't worked with before, be sure to test your iron on it on a scrap piece. Be sure that no press marks are left. If you do, you can use a press cloth on top of it. But I happen to know that this fabric here is pretty forgiving. I can use my iron directly on it. It doesn't leave any marks. And we'll want to do the right and wrong side. All right. Now my vest is open at the top. I'm going to slide it on over the feet first. Oh, in order to keep the tail string eyelet out, I have a safety pin in it before the puppet is strung. And go ahead and tack stitch this down. Fold the back of the neck under. Sometimes you can glue it in place. This. And then whip stitch here and whip stitch here. Doesn't matter what it looks like, it's going to be under our coat. Jacket. And I'm going to do a little, since this jacket isn't getting lined or anything, I'm going to do a little rolled hem, which means I'm going to fold over 1/4 of an inch and another 1/4 of an inch. So get your 2 pieces wrong side up, and first fold over the top of the lapel on one side. And then be sure to do opposite version on the other side. for the front of the coat, the front where the coat would close. We'll sew these twice. This is just the first fold over to be sure that our raw edge is well hidden. Raw edge meaning the edge of the fabric that doesn't have any stitching on it or any mechanisms to keep it from fraying. Now I will also do a rolled hem on the bottom hem of the coat, but I'm going to wait for the very end when all three pieces are attached. But you wouldn't do this if you were sewing regular human clothes. You would be able to do the side seams first if you were sewing human clothes. And then over here on the back piece, do a fold over of the back neck of my thing. It's pretty curved, so as close to 5/8 inch as you can. That would be the benefit of doing both a front and a back piece for your bodice. So this. Next, we're going to fold over our rolled seam. And when you get up to the top, then fold the top lapel down also. All right. Then go ahead and stitch that down. So I put my pins in backwards on this one. Because you always want to make it so that the extra fabric is coming out of the left side of the machine. So you got to put your pins in according to that. All right. All right. There's our front. And then let's do the side seams on this coat. Be sure you're doing right sides together. Oh, and this will need to be pressed, of course. Of course. Oops, I'm still with my, put your needle back on the center. Of course, you can always costume your marionettes by sewing your costumes conventionally and then taking the body apart on the marionette to put on the costume. So it just all depends if you want to take off hands or arms and then put them back on, or if you want to sew up your costume later. Now press all this. Now we're going to do a rolled hem along the bottom of this coat. And when you're picking fabrics to use for marionettes, the lighter and the more movable, the better. Because the scale is smaller, so sometimes fabric behaves differently on a smaller scale, like in a smaller garment. And stiff fabric can look really blocky. So if you want fabric that moves like its human counterparts, be sure you're picking lighter weight stuff. And if you find fabric that has a little bit of stretch in it, that's always good. Because marionettes are hard to fit clothes over. And also you want to pick fabric that is a pattern that would be the scale to the puppet. If I had like a big plaid, that would not go with the illusion that this puppet is existing in its own world at a scale. You can probably get away with pressing everything later. Let's turn this over now. Come on. Yeah, I should have pressed. All right, you can put your needle over to the side. All right, now of course, go press that. Okay, I'll press this bottom seam now. Now we're going to do a fitting and see where to fold over our lapels. So get your puppet. And we're going to hand stitch these top shoulder seams. But fit it in place. Get the back of your coat up and over. And you're gonna fold the raw side down. And then just so we can press it right, maybe like a and that. Okay. See how even they are. So here are my two lapels that I've folded over to press them. This one looks a little bigger, so I'm going to reduce the size of that one. I'm going to go with that. Here's the other side. Okay. Now, put this on. Let's lay the front lapel down first, so that the raw edges are facing towards the back of the puppet. And then on the back side, fold over, covering the raw edges. and work with it until you can get it kind of even. And check and see if it's hanging to your liking in the front. I don't really like mine. All right, now slip stitch that into place. Stitch is a hidden running stitch. sleeves. So take your tape measure, measure from where you want the sleeve to start, the seam of the sleeve, and then all the way down to where you want the sleeve to end. And on my puppet, it looks like it's about 7 inches long. And then measure for how far around you want it to be. And it looks like I want it to be 6 inches around. So for my particular puppet, 7 inches long, 6 inches around. We got enough paper here. Okay, so get a Sharpie. And first I'm going to draw my 7-inch up and down. So that's the length of my sleeve. And then my sleeve needs to be 6 inches, so put your middle line in the center, 3 inches. There we go. And draw sides. And this is again, this is not how you would do a regular human sleeve. This is a symmetrical version. And then up on top here, I do have this French seam ruler thing. And it helps make a curve for the top. Or you could just eyeball a curve. Then add your seam allowances. I love the 5/8 inch seam allowance, so that's what I always use. And put 5/8 inch seam allowances, oops, all the way around. Then cut this out. This is something I want to get in the practice of. Label your pattern. So mine is Scrooge sleeve. and fold it in half. All right, there we have our Scrooge sleeve. Lay your fabric out so that the grain is running up and down the sleeve. Cut two of them, of course. So fold up a 5/8 of an inch. Get it? Now, I've gotten pretty consistent at seeing a 5/8 inch seam allowance by working with it all my life. So don't feel shy to measure it if you don't feel like you can eyeball it. I've gotten pretty good at seeing 1/4 inch and 5/8 inch. But ask me how long a mile is, I got no idea. Your iron for the steaming. The tube, the seam underneath the sleeve to make it into a tube. And so that to press open the seams on these little sleeves. I don't have a sleeve board big enough, but I have this point presser tool, which is designed for pressing collars on human clothes. But this thing is small enough to get puppet sleeves on. Now I am doing a simplified, quicker way of sewing. Like for instance, if this were a costume that would be more likely to be seen, you would do the sleeve seam first and then the hem of the sleeve. But I feel with marionette costumes, not as much can be seen from stage, and so in order to save time, I sometimes make little shortcuts like this. But one place you should try never to make a shortcut is pressing. Pressing is what will make your project look crisp and flat. I find when you're making a project, sometimes it feels almost half the construction time is pressing and half is sewing. All right, now we have our two sleeves. Put on the sleeves, and then we're going to do a slip stitch for the actual shoulder seam by hand. So depending on how big your hand is to get the sleeve on, sometimes you can take off the hand, but I hate doing that, so I'm going to take the wires and bend them in, then take a plastic bag and put it over the hand. This is to help everything slip through. And then take your sleeve and put the hand through. Now, if you can't If you don't want to take off the hand, another option is to open up the seam on the sleeve and then hand stitch it back together when it's on. There are many options. Oh, and side note on my pants here, to make it look like I didn't say this in my pants video, that to make it look like they're pressed in the front, I did just a tiny little pin tuck in the front of the pants, and then it holds it in that shape. I'll put a link to my pants video down below. All right, there's one. Extend my hand back out now. My hands are made out of wire and gluey water and fabric dipped in the gluey water. So they're still pretty flexible. I made a video about how I made my hands for this build, so check it out if you're crazy enough to want to start to build marionettes. If you are, welcome. Get the sleeves so that they are hanging evenly. And I gotta tell you, to be honest, sometimes one arm is longer than the other, so sometimes you can visually fix that with your sleeves. So start by pinning them in place on the outside. Then, in addition, we want to try to match up the side seam of the coat and the underseam of the sleeve together. So, put a pin in there. And this is a little difficult to get smooth because, for one, marionette shoulders are not shaped in a round way. And we're trying to put a round shape around them. But we're going to hand sew them in, which means we'll have a lot more control over ease. And how you do this, once you get them kind of sort of where you want them, take the top of the sleeve, fold it over about 5/8 of an inch, and pin it in place. And do that all the way around. And also, this is one of the reasons why it's helpful to use kind of stretchy fabric for marionette costumes, because the fabric can extend or shrink where you need it to. But you can also do extra things like put on sleeve cuffs or make it a coat and tails. Which is a hidden running stitch. I like to use curved needles for puppetry. I think it helps when you're working on tiny things like this. Stitching. Do a knot every inch. like buttonhole knots. And then I go in, since I use a double thread, I go in and put in a few granny knots on top of it so that I know for sure that my end knot is not going to slip out. All right, one side done. Now let's move on to the other side. And there you have it, a vest and coat ready for the stage. We are costumed and ready to go. Please like and subscribe. We can costume more puppets. If you like my videos, please like and subscribe. Every time you subscribe, we'll be able to dress a puppet.